Hello, my name is Jess, and this is Patient POV, the podcast where we talk about all things chronic illness related. And today we had the great chance of talking with Sarah, somebody who is a fellow POTSI, and in honor of Dysautonomia Month, because this is going to come out October 1st. We got to chat about her experience with a chronic illness, specifically with POTS and fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue syndrome. So it was a really great opportunity to hear from her. And she is from the United States. So that was cool to hear that perspective. So I just thought I would do a little intro, and something interesting this week in my life is Jordan, my brother, got the Wii back out, and we've been playing Mario Kart Wii, and we haven't done that in a very long time. It was one of those games that we never had growing up. We had a Wii growing up, but never Mario Kart. So it was always the game we would go to other people's house and play, and it was so exciting. So I think it was last Christmas or 2 Christmases ago during COVID, must have been a few Christmases ago, during COVID, he got the game and the steering wheel real remote holders. So we've been playing that a lot lately for some reason, but it's been a lot of fun. So that was kind of the highlight of my week this week, was getting to replay those games. So that was a lot of fun. But anyways, onward we go, and we can just jump right into our interview with Sarah. Do you want to just start by introducing yourself, sharing a little bit about who you are and kind of what you've gone through?
Yes, so my name's Sarah Reed, and I am 20 years old, almost 21, and I have multiple chronic illnesses. I have POTS, fibromyalgia, and ME, CFS, and I was diagnosed with those at 17. So I've officially had a diagnosis for a few years now, and just kind of learning how to navigate life a little bit differently than most people my age. And that's a little bit about me.
Yeah, awesome. And then I'm trying to ask everybody who comes on the podcast, is there any TV shows or movies that you've been watching lately?
Oh my gosh, yes. So I've been, because it's like, in my mind, it's fall. I know it's only like the beginning of September, but I've been rewatching Gilmore Girls. And
Yes, yes.
yeah, so I've been loving that. So that's kind of what, on the days I don't feel as good or I need a distraction from symptoms, that's my go to show.
Perfect. Yes. No, fall time has to be Gilmore Girls for sure.
100%.
Yeah. Yeah. No, for sure. So speaking of those bad days, what are some things that you like to do or you find you're able to do when you're going through a bad day or a flare up, like those coping strategies?
I definitely would say like watching TV is a huge thing for me because it's low energy. And then listening to podcasts, music. If I'm having a low spoon day, but still not completely out of spoons, aka energy, I will do work on digital art or try to crochet. Those are things I could do sitting down and still, it still takes energy, but it's something I can do kind of distract myself on days that I have a little bit more energy, but still not as much as like cleaning the house or something crazy.
Yeah, no, for sure. Well, I saw recently you posted your nighttime route or your daytime routine, and I was like,
Yes.
"Yep, that sounds about right. That's awesome."
Yes.
So yeah, so then on those days that you are having a bad day, you don't have so many spoons, as we like to call it. Who would you say is your support system that you really turn to on those bad days?
I'd definitely say my family. I'm very fortunate to I have a huge support system, and I'm very thankful for that because I know not everyone in the chronic illness community has that. But my mom is a huge supporter, and so is my dad, my grandparents and aunts. I mean, I just have such a huge community that I can turn to, and my friends are very supportive. So I mean, even though they might not have chronic illnesses and stuff, they can still support me and be there and listen to me like vent about my hard days.
Yeah, no, for sure. That's awesome. Speaking of getting diagnosed with your chronic illness and whatnot, you were mentioning you got diagnosed when you were 17. How long previous to that did you start experiencing symptoms?
Oh gosh, I've struggled with my health off and on since I was like a kid, since I was a
Mm.
young kid, and it just kept progressively getting worse each year. And so around probably 11, I started having problems with my right eye. and I actually it took a long time for the doctors to figure out what was wrong. And when they did, it was at 12, they realized, like 12-ish, 13, they realized I had staph infection in my right eye. And it was kind of a downward spiral from there, which we didn't realize, the dry eyes that can come with some of my health issues and how it can create infection and stuff. So it was just, lots of medicine for that, taking care of that at a young age. And then started dealing with like super fatigue and stuff like that and couldn't do the things most of my peers did. I was homeschooled, so it did make it easier. I could rest a lot and still make sure, kept learning and stuff. But it was a very hard journey to like finally get a diagnosis. And doctors, of course, as most people in the chronic illness community know, lots of gaslighting, lots of doctors saying your tests are normal, congratulations, or you look completely fine, or like, all these things. And so it was such a long journey. I think I started seeking out doctors and specialists in hospitals around 13. And finally, after years and years of misdiagnosis or being like, well, it could be this or it could be that, I finally, at 17, we traveled to the Mayo Clinic in Minnesota, which is where I got my diagnoses. And so it's just kind of been that whole process of like where I thought I'd have this magic pill where I get better. Now I realize I have something like chronic illnesses, and I have to just learn how to um, treat the symptoms and help my body the best I can, and also learning how to thrive in a body that is sometimes it's a struggle to thrive in.
Yeah, no, for sure. So now you say chronic illnesses, just so that everyone is really clear, or if you're comfortable, do you mind sharing what illnesses you have?
Yeah, so POTS, which stands for postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, for those of you who don't know, and then fibromyalgia and MECFS, which I just learned how to pronounce. If I'm pronouncing this wrong, I'm like really sorry, but it's myalgic encephalomyelitis, which is the ME, and then CFS, chronic fatigue syndrome. And so they kind of go hand in hand. So those are the diagnoses that I have as of right now.
As of right now, yes. That's always
Which
the caveat.
hopefully that's all I have. But there's always that question of is there more?
Yeah, no, for sure, for sure. So you were, and thank you for sharing that.
Oh no.
But you were mentioning on your Instagram, or you did a video about like a day in the life with chronic illnesses. So would you be able to just take us through, if you could think of like an average day or like an average week, what would be kind of your daily routine for you?
I would say definitely I wake up at so my alarm goes off at 10:15 normally, and I know that's super late, but that's what works best for my body, and I'll take my beta blockers to help with POTS, and then I'll normally lay in bed and rest until around 11, and then I'll have my salt drinks because gotta have that for POTS. And then if I'm having a high pain day from my other health issues, fibromyalgia or something, it normally takes a little bit longer to wake up because of being super stiff in the morning and just really tired. And then I will have breakfast and then normally rest because, breakfast takes it out of you. And then each day it kind of changes a little bit depending on what I have the next day or what I did the day before. But normally rest is like crucial. It gets the most attention. So rest is, of course, what I do the most. And then I'll try to, maybe pick up in my room a little bit because I like to have a clean space. And so I don't like it to get out of hand because then that takes too much energy trying to get it back together. And then maybe work on Instagram posts or my podcast or something, and then eat lunch and rest again. And so it's really just having to, instead of overdoing it, learning to do a little bit and then rest, do a little bit and then rest. So it's just that navigating and knowing. And there's some days where I have more energy, and I'll probably, as we all do, we push ourselves a little too hard on the days we feel better. And so I'll maybe go shopping with my mom if, using my wheelchair. And, but then I'll like come home and I'll rest. So it's just one of those things where you make the best of it and you do what you can when your body lets you. And then you also realize that your body is more sensitive than most. So you have to make sure you give it the love and attention it needs and the rest it needs.
Yeah, no, for sure. Thank you for that. And you mentioned your podcast. Where can they find you with your podcast there as well?
Yeah, so it is Be Positive It's like POTS and then is, so it's like positive, but positive. And that's on like most um, streaming platforms. I think it's on Spotify and Apple Music. I don't know. It's on a couple. You can Google it and be like Sarah Reed at Be Positive Podcast, and it should pull up.
Perfect. Perfect. And then what kind of things do you cover on the podcast?
Oh, just kind of like all kinds of stuff. Whatever I feel like is important to me, like that week, I'll like try to address it. So it's very like there's no like set like plan. It's just kind of like what do I feel like needs to be talked about? Because I feel like there's so many topics that are hard to discuss or can be difficult to discuss. And so I feel like I kind of want to break those barriers and like be the one that talks about them or at least talks about it more in depth. And that's why I love that you asked me on because I feel like there's not a whole lot of podcasts out there for young adults with chronic illnesses. There's not even like a whole lot of podcasts for people struggling with disabilities or chronic illness. So I think what you're doing is really cool, just kind of showing people, that you can thrive with health issues, even if it looks a little bit different.
Yeah, no, for sure. Thank you for that. Yeah, no, I totally agree. And the thing is we are showing that every condition is different, but everybody is all struggling with something. And so, yeah, no, I do appreciate that. The encouragement there for sure. Um, as we're speaking about something that's not typically spoken about all that often, you were mentioning the medical gaslighting. We're talking about all these different problems with the healthcare system. Now, you're in the United States, and so what has your experience been with the American healthcare system? I know you said you went to the Mayo Clinic for a little bit. So what's that been like for you?
I feel like everywhere you're going to have your doctors who really want to try to do their best to help you, but you're also going to have those doctors who maybe should have chose a different profession that aren't maybe the nicest at their job. So I've definitely had some really supportive doctors. My functional neurologist that I see now is amazing, and she's so supportive. But I've also had doctors who've like been really mean. When I first was looking for answers about my health issues, I went to one doctor. He was in a different state, so we traveled to see him, and he was like supposed to be top notch, like the greatest of all time. He had written like college textbooks, so we're like, maybe this guy is gonna help us. Um, but he took one look at me and said, "Your hair is too thick for you to have health issues." And then he found out I was homeschooled, and he was like, "The reason that you have health issues, if you even do, is because you're homeschooled and don't have PE." Which, if you knew me, you knew I was very active, loved to do everything, but because of my health, I had to stop doing that. And so, and not even like not some of my friends didn't even do PE that went to public school. So it was just one of those things. He looked at me and already labeled me, and my test came back abnormal. And he was like, "Well, maybe there's something wrong." But we're like, we found a new doctor. Thank you for not helping me." So I've definitely experienced super kind doctors who are willing to help, but I've also experienced doctors just being very weird and not helping me at all.
Yeah, no, that is horrible when that happens. You just
Yeah.
it doesn't feel good at all. Like that is
No,
one of the worst feelings.
definitely. And I had this was a couple years back after I had a diagnosis of POTS, which, with the high heart rate and everything. And she was also a big doctor from a big hospital, and she told me that I didn't have anything wrong. It was because I was deconditioned that my heart rate would get to 250 beats per minute walking to the kitchen. And so it was just like, so I've seen, the good, the bad, the ugly. I've seen all of it.
Yeah, and so when you have a doctor, you're sitting in their office and they're telling you something you know is not true, like it's because of deconditioning or because you were homeschooled or all these like very untrue things. How do you deal with that in terms of once you come out of that appointment or even within the appointment? Like, how do you do that?
I feel like it's definitely a hard thing. And especially like for me, like when I would go to the doctor and stuff, it takes it's different than when a healthy person goes. You are using your time and your energy to get dressed. You're feeling all those strong emotions. You're feeling scared, a little anxious, hopeful for maybe some help, then you're nervous. So you're going through all these emotions already and you're getting there and you're having to sit up, which takes energy. And so when you have something like being gaslit, like it hurts deep within. And so I feel like there's no one way to cope. There's lots of different ways. It's emotion you have to definitely process. I listen to a lot of Christian metal music after appointments to kind of help me cope because I was like, if I listen to sad girl music, like I'm gonna break down. So I was like, I gotta put on my Christian metal music, like screaming everything's gonna be okay. So I feel like, and then there was times where it was just like you just feel numb, like it's just hard and it's frustrating. So I feel like each appointment too is different, and I feel like the more appointments you go to, the more you're kind of like you begin to expect it, but then still when it happens, it's still a hard thing, and so I feel like just processing those emotions, however it may look, is the best thing, and it looks different for every doctor's visit, every person, and it's just I mean, there's no right or wrong way to process it.
Yeah, no, for sure. And then speaking of this, like big emotions that we get from all these different scenarios, both in the doctor's office and then throughout your days, because we have so many ups and downs and all these chronic conditions. How have you coped like with your mental health side of things? How have you handled everything?
Yeah, so I feel like, having a support system has been huge, and having just the chronic illness community where you can connect with people who just understand what it's like can help so much. And then for me personally, at 17, that's when I became a Christian. I mean, I grew up in the church and stuff, but for me, that was the vital moment of a kind of a realization that I wanted God to be my own relationship, not just something my parents and my grandparents talked about. And so I feel like not that that made things like as soon as I became a Christian, I was like, well, everything's great. Like it wasn't that, but it was this realization of I didn't have to go through this alone. I always had a built in support system because of my relationship with God and knowing that while he could be a best friend to me, he was also in control of everything. And so while I still struggle with all those emotions that, of course, we all go through, it helps knowing that God is still working all things for my good, or even being on this podcast for you. If I was still in such a dark place, I couldn't be on this podcast talking with you. And, I couldn't be sharing with other people that, yes, it can be scary and life can be hard, but it can also be beautiful. And so I feel like for me, coping, just being a Christian, having God to lean on has been like such a huge thing.
Yeah, that's amazing. Thank you for sharing that. Going back as well, you were mentioning when you finish some doctor's appointments, you do a Christian, what was it, heavy metal, you said? Do you
Yeah.
have any favorite art, like artists or groups or anything like that for that?
Oh, yeah. So my favorite Christian metal band would have to be a band called For Today. And I just love their music. And, it's metal music. So, of course, it's like the hardcore drumming and like the guitar, but then they're screaming that, like, you know, God is triumphant. Like, he's like amazing. Like, he's going to win the battle. So, it's things like that where I was like, I needed that metal music, but I also like still needed God at the center. So, it was screaming like, God's in control, which is what I needed. And so, sometimes just having those things where it's like, knowing that God doesn't get mad at our emotions. He created us with all these emotions. And so just learning how to kind of point them in the right direction and use them for good and to help others and just learn and grow in yourself. If I didn't have the doctor's appointments and stuff with the gaslighting, like I wouldn't know so much more about myself, which I know that sounds like cliche and stupid, but I've gotten to a point, now where I've been struggling with my health for years and I finally feel like not that I've accepted things, but I'm starting to kind of see the beauty in the right now while still like having hope in the future.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's beautiful. I love that. um, and then we were also talking about, you were mentioning the community and your support system. Are there any other resources or things that you do to kind of help figure things out, cope with things, like any organizations or books or websites or support groups or anything like that that you really like looked into?
Yeah, so a couple years ago, my mom bought me a devotional book for Christians with chronic illnesses, and it's called Searching for Sea Glass. It's on Amazon. I'm sure if you like searching for sea glass, you'll um you'll find it. But that was a really helpful resource for me, kind of seeing how the person who wrote the book, she had chronic illnesses and she struggled and stuff, but then still how she found her hope in God was like super just cool to me, and it really helped me process my own grief and stuff, and because this was like shortly after being diagnosed, so it's been a couple years, and so that's one helpful thing, and then just Instagram has been so amazing. I found so much community and support. And then YouTube, I'm always, especially in the beginning, was always like searching like POTS or fibromyalgia or like different YouTube videos of people with my health issues or like a day in the life. Like I'd just like search all these things to try to see what it was like for other people. And that really helped me.
That's awesome, yeah. And then you were just mentioning a really great point there. I'm not sure how comfortable you are going into that, but you mentioned the grief part of chronic illnesses, and I feel like this isn't talked about nearly as much as it needs to be. Because when we think
Uh,
of grief, we think of losing a person or something along those lines. But do you have anything in terms of the grief that you had gone through?
yeah, I feel like it's such a hard thing too, and I feel like everyone it's so unique. And like you said, when we think of grief, we think of losing someone, but you can also grieve the healthy body in a sense, or the healthy body you never got to have or you had and then you lost it. And so it's one of those things where you see your health kind of slipping and you're having to process the doctor's appointments, getting diagnoses, and like all these things, and it can be hard, and you're having to grieve your healthy body. And because I'm 20 years old and I see all my friends on Instagram, like they're going to college and sororities or they're traveling the world, and that's amazing for them. I'm so glad that's part of their journey. But for me, mine looked different, and I had to process grieving what I thought it would look like and kind of a- accept and thrive in the now. So I mean, it's definitely hard to kind of say like what I do. I definitely think, like I said, my relationship with God has helped me through that grieving process, knowing that He's there with me. He doesn't get upset at my grieving. He doesn't, like I have a plan to prosper you and not to harm you, to give you a future and hope. Why don't you just listen to that and stop grieving? He sat there with me in a sense and was comforting me even when I was grieving, and he never got mad at that. So I think just having that relationship with God, knowing that I was allowed to grieve and it was okay that, I was grieving a life that I thought I would have, and just learning how to move forward in this new life of health issues, because there's no guidebook for it, unfortunately, as much as I'm sure you wish there was. So that'd be hard too, knowing I'm just kind of making this stuff up as I go along. So that can be scary, but just each day, I mean, and it's not the grief process isn't something where you can, I mean, it's just like if you grieve a death, it's not like you're going to grieve all of it in a couple of days and then like move on with your life. It's going to be this constant thing that ebbs and flows, and you're going to have seasons where you're going to do great with it, and then you're going to have seasons when you're like, I have to sit in these emotions and I have to work through them and I have to process them. So just knowing that it's okay to process those emotions, and it's okay if you go months where you have acceptance and then days where you're like struggling with that. So just learning that's okay, however your emotions turn out, it's okay to process them and sit in them and work through them.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah. Amazing. Yes. And then another question for you here is, I know we both took a sip of water before, so we do our water bottles, and I saw you had a watch on there. Not sure if it tracks your heart rate at
Yeah,
all.
that's
Yeah. Do you have any other things that you have or use throughout the day to kind of help you throughout your day?
oh, definitely. I'm a big fan of compression socks. I'm wearing no, they're ice cream cone ones right now. And yeah, so compression socks are huge. I do the 20 to 30 compression, if that means anything to anyone. Those are my favorite. And then I'll do electrolyte drinks. I have one with me now. So there's like Liquid IV, BioLite, LMNT, which is an electrolyte drink like packet. So there's so many amazing ones. So definitely having that. Um, I'll do ice packs. I'll get like little like mini square ice packs, and if I'm going somewhere or if I get overheated, I will put them in my shirt or pants. And so I know it sounds funny, but that's something that can help with temperature dysregulation. Of course, I have my waters always beside me. Salt chews. I actually took one before I came on this episode with you because I wanted to like have a little extra sodium in my system. So just like different things like that, learning to just always be prepared and kind of, I mean, I kind of feel like a mom in a sense, because you're always, when someone's a mom, they're always having to carry everything for the kid. I feel like I carry everything to help my body. So I'm always having like all the supplies and supplements and waters and stuff next to me.
Yeah, no, I completely understand. Do you, so you said liquid IV, you said a few others like LMNT for the salt, and then the salt chews. I've never heard of those. What
Yeah.
brand do you use for that?
So it's Vitasium, like
Mm.
it's like Vitasium salt chews, and they have different flavors. I've tried lemon and orange so far, and those are really good. And they taste like little sour candies, which I'm obsessed with. So it doesn't even taste salty to me. It might to someone else, but they're really good. And if I'm like struggling, like I'll just have one of those, or one or two of those, and it helps me feel better. Especially at night, I'll have blood pressure drops. And if I have a couple of those, I can normally go to sleep and my blood pressure doesn't drop as bad.
That's awesome. Yeah, yeah, for sure. That's very helpful, and I'm gonna look into those as well.
Definitely try 'em.
So yeah, I'm 100% going to try them. So then we were talking about you have the podcast, and so what made you want to become an advocate in the chronic health? So you're specifically talking about POTS quite a bit, because that's what you're struggling with here. What made you want to be an advocate?
So I have struggled, like I said earlier, with my health issues since I was a kid, but I actually kept my health issues a secret until I was about 19. So I haven't been sharing it very long. But it was just, I was, of course, I had all those emotions I was struggling with. And then taking so long to get answers, I kind of felt like maybe I was being dramatic or like, what if people found out the truth and they looked at me differently? What if they thought I was lying? What if they thought I was weird? So it's just all those emotions. It's like a young teenager and then a young adult having to like work through and process. So I feel like once I finally my health started getting to a point where I couldn't hide it anymore. So I was like, I wanted to start advocating for others, but because I started sorry, I'm trying to, like, remember all, like, the details, but I actually created my Be Positive Instagram, um, I think it was last year, it was, like, 20 no, it was 2021, and I created it because it was starting to get to the point where I was having to tell my friends and stuff, and I was like, "I want my friends to kind of see what it's like to live in my life, to see my perspective," because it was really hard for me to kinda open up and share because when I went into to hang out with friends or went out in public, I kind of wanted to focus on having fun and kind of as best I could leave my symptoms at the house, and then when I come home, I'd crash and, of course, have those crazy symptoms. So if I could kind of put them aside while I was out with friends, I wanted to do that, but I also wanted them to see a perspective from my side, and then as I started creating my Instagram, I realized, like, I could help others like me, like, I wanted to be the voice that I couldn't be when I was younger because I was too scared, and so I feel like my goal was really to help my friends and family understand, but also to help others who are like I was, when I was younger a few years ago, they're just too scared and are processing all these hard emotions and can't necessarily advocate for themselves because they are processing all the grief and all the scary feelings. So um, I created that Instagram, and then it was like this year, it was just a few months ago, I created the podcast, and it's just been so amazing to connect with others like me all over the world. So
Yeah, yeah, no, that's awesome. And so I know we've mentioned your podcast and all that, but do you have any future goals or aspirations for the future, how you kind of are hoping things are going to go?
yeah, so I feel like I'm kind of very much in the just go with the flow, whatever happens, happens. Because as you know, it can be hard to make plans with um, having health issues and stuff. But I think it would be cool. I've been working on like chronic illness merch, and I've sold some stuff. So that's been really cool. Just kind of like getting awareness out there and helping others. And then, I don't know, just kind of seeing where life takes me and, what God's plans are for my life. So just kind of taking it one day at a time, I guess, because there's days where I feel great and I could go shopping with my wheelchair, but then there are days that I have to like rest a lot. So just kind of, I'd be open to anything, honestly.
Yeah, that's awesome. So continue working on what you're working on and see where it goes, eh? Yeah. No, that's awesome. And then my last question for you would be, do you have any words of encouragement or inspiration for anyone who's listening who might be going through like a similar experience with either fibromyalgia or the pot side of things, anything like that?
Yeah, I would say that's a hard one. That's a good one, but that's a hard one. Um, just know you're not alone and every day is gonna look different. And if you're having a good health day, remember to still rest because that can be hard. And I also put a poll up on my Instagram. I think it was like a couple of days ago, asking people on my Instagram, "Do you ever like have a good health day and think you're cured and then overdo it?" And everyone was like, "Oh my gosh, yes." And so I feel like that's yeah, so we do a lot where we'll, have a good health day and we'll feel good and then completely overdo it and then be like, "Well, why am I bad again?" Where it's just it ebbs and flows. Take the good days as they come, thrive in them, enjoy them, and then on the bad days, rest knowing that you thrived on your good days. And it's okay if every day looks a little bit different. There is no, um, one size fits all for chronic illness. It affects everyone differently. So just because someone's cousin can do something and they have a chronic illness doesn't mean you can or vice versa. Just learning to just help your body however it looks.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, no, and you bring up such a good point. It's a consistent thing of I'm having a good day 2 days in a row. I'm fine. Nope.
Yeah, exactly. It's such a struggle.
Yeah, for sure. Well, so you're speaking of your Instagram there. Where can people find you for your, so we talked about your podcast is the pots be positive. And then your Instagram, where can they find you there?
So it's B_positive. So they're both be positive. Just one's a podcast and one's Instagram. But if you Google, I think now, even if you Google like be positive Sarah Reed, I think my podcast will come up. And I don't know if it does that for Instagram yet because I'm not like super like popular or anything. But on Instagram, it's B_positive, no capitals or anything.
Awesome. Yeah, wonderful. Well, thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you. I so enjoyed it.